Hello, good afternoon. This is Maggie Hurwitz from the Weather Service Climate Services branch, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to feature several of the regional coordinators from NIDIS, the National Integrated Drought Information System, and they're going to tell you about NIDIS and their activities around the country and some opportunities for you to get involved. So I'll turn it over to Molly Wallison, who's going to give an overview of NIDIS.
Great. Thank you, Maggie. As Maggie said, my name is Molly Wallison, and I am the Midwest Regional Drought Information Coordinator with NIDIS. And today you'll be hearing from myself and 4 other presenters to give you sort of some different flavors of regional collaboration between the National Weather Service and NIDIS. But I'll be starting us off first with a brief overview of NIDIS. We will also have a presentation on the relaunch of our U.S. drought portal, or Drought.gov. And finally, we would like to leave some time at the end to have some discussion with this group. So NIDIS, or the National Integrated Drought Information System, was first authorized by Congress in 2006 and reauthorized again in 2014 and 2018 with an interagency mandate to develop and provide a national drought early warning information system. Our ultimate goal is to help the country move from a reactive to a more proactive approach to managing drought risks and impacts. Through our authorization, we engage with federal, state, tribal, and local partners, as well as the private sector, academic institutions, and citizen scientists. In the most recent authorization in 2018, NOAA, through NIDIS, was directed to develop a strategy for a coordinated national soil moisture network. As I mentioned, we were tasked by Congress to develop a national drought early warning system. So what exactly is a drought early warning system? For me, it's helpful to dissect what this means, first by starting with the definition of early warning. Early warning means the provision of timely and effective information that allows individuals exposed to a hazard to take action to avoid or reduce their risk and to prepare for an effective response. So when we put this in the context of drought, what are those pieces of information about drought that is needed for people to make more informed decisions? The graphic on the right shows the components of a drought early warning system. And those include observations and monitoring, predictions and forecasting, planning and preparedness, interdisciplinary research and applications, and finally, communication and outreach. With the ultimate goal of building out a national system, we recognize that impacts and information about drought differ across the country. So our approach to achieve this goal is through a regional approach. So far to date, NIDIS has established 9 drought early warning systems, or DEWS, across the country. Our regional DEWS utilize new and existing networks of federal, tribal, state, local, and academic partners to make climate and drought science accessible and useful for decision makers. So this slide here shows our entire NIDIS team, just to give you an idea of who makes up the program office and also who might be a good point of contact for you and your local office. So you'll be hearing from 5 of us today, including myself, Elizabeth Waite, one of our program coordinators, Britt Parker, our Pacific Northwest and Missouri River Basin coordinator, Meredith Muth, our Southeast coordinator, and Kat Bevington, our web content and development coordinator. So while today's webinar is going to focus on regional collaboration efforts between NIDIS and the National Weather Service, we did want to highlight a few national level efforts that might be of interest to you. First, NIDIS is a partner with the National Water Center, and our biggest effort recently is supporting the development of a prototype for soil moisture representation in the National Water Model. Secondly, we work closely with the Climate Prediction Center, most significantly partnering to improve seasonal forecasts. CPC has also given our NIDIS coordinators an in-person training in College Park on Outlook products. Another example is the National Weather Service representation on our NIDIS Executive Council and our NIDIS working groups, which are both groups that we engage with at the national level for consultation for our program development. Next, there was a National Weather Service member on the planning committee for our National Drought Forum, which just took place this past summer in July of 2019. And finally, NIDIS team members are on the NOAA West and Central Regional Collaboration teams. And I mention this because National Weather Service is also very active on these regional collaboration teams within NOAA. And so we definitely view our membership as a way to engage at the regional level with the National Weather Service. So, and with that, we are going to switch gears a little bit and focus on some regional highlights of NIDIS and National Weather Service collaboration on 5 of our DEWS. And first up, we have Meredith Muse, who is the Southeast DEWS coordinator. And Meredith, just let me know when you need me to advance your slides.
Great, thank you so much, Molly. Actually, can you go back one slide to look at the picture of the DEWS? So I'm going to talk about the Southeast. I've only been with NIDIS for about 6 months now, but I've had the honor of working with many in the Weather Service for about 10 years since I've been at NOAA. If you look at the Southeast, you'll see that there are 2 drought early warning systems, Coastal Carolina and the Apalachicola Chattahoochee Flint DEWS. Next. First, I just wanted to highlight where we already have active collaborations with the Weather Service in the Southeast region, and it's largely around communications, external communications. So, for example, the Southeast River Forecast Center is a regular presenter on a monthly drought webinar related to the ACF River Basin. Also, in addition to just these regular monthly webinars, during last year's 2019 flash drought, we set up some timely drought update webinars, and we had the Southern region and the Southeast RFC present during those special webinars that were well attended. We don't currently have active collaborations with the Coastal Carolina DEWS at this time, although I do know that there are active Weather Service WFOs, et cetera, engaged in the state level drought planning teams and coordination throughout the Southeast region. So next. Okay, so here's where I see some opportunities to further improve Weather Service collaboration with NIDIS in the Southeast region. And so one is to really kind of enhance and improve some of these communication tools we have that have a pretty broad reach across the Southeast. One is the existing ACF webinars. We'd love to have you know, WFOs come on where appropriate. We can talk about some specific topics of interest. In addition, we are proposing, working with the Southeast Regional Climate Center, to develop a new monthly climate webinar that will include information on drought as well as flood and other Outlook events. And so that's a great opportunity to further amplify the messages of the Weather Service. In addition to just communication, NIDIS also supports some information tools, some drought information tools. You're going to hear about the main, our Drought.gov web portal shortly, but in the Southeast, we're developing a new online interactive database for drought information. It's called the ACF Drought Dashboard, although it will be relevant to the broader Southeast, hopefully at some point in the near term, certainly to Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. And we're having some listening sessions to inform the development of this. So it would be great to have Weather Service not only understand how they can use it in their information sharing, but also to contribute to the development so we can make it most relevant to the locales where we're working. And finally, we're looking at building on those 2 individual DEWS I showed you in that picture, those kind of slivers of the Carolinas and the ACF, and develop instead one big Southeast DEWS with a larger footprint. And again, it would be great to have some Weather Service engagement at the WFO, RFC, and other levels. And we are also talking to the National Water Center as well, especially since they're located in the Southeast region. And I think that's all I have for now, Molly. Back to you.
Great, thank you. So I will spend just a couple of minutes highlighting the Midwest region and our coordination that we've had with the National Weather Service. So first off, I just wanted to mention that both the Midwest and the Missouri River Basin, which are our DEWS regions, cover NOAA's central region. So Britt Parker is the Missouri River Basin coordinator, and I'm the Midwest. So we coordinate often when it comes to work with others in NOAA since our regions overlap. And so Britt and I do work very closely with Ray Wolf, the Central Region Climate Focal Lead, when it comes to coordination and planning for the region, especially climate services for the region as well. And Ray also has been very helpful at sharing drought information with the climate and drought focal points throughout offices in our two regions. So another opportunity for National Weather Service collaboration we've been exploring in the Midwest is around communications of drought information, particularly when it comes to social media. So in 2018, the Midwest DEWS had a communications workshop in which several National Weather Service attendees were present. As a group, we decided that it made the most sense to combine efforts on social media to spread the word about drought impacts and the status of drought. So for instance, if NIDIS posts something about drought for the Midwest region, we ideally then will let our partners know in the region that that's posted and everyone else can share through their accounts. So using our existing audiences to hopefully share the message. And in order to do this, facilitate this exchange process, we have set up a social media listserv for the Midwest DEWS. It's still growing and we're assessing how it's working. There are a handful of National Weather Service offices on the list, but I would really love to have all of the Midwest DEWS National Weather Service offices involved in this, especially because the National Weather Service has such a huge presence on Twitter and other social media platforms. I think this would be a great way to partner and spread the word. So finally, drought response and coordination. As a regional entity, it's difficult for NIDIS to be present or at the table when drought occurs, particularly if it's just one small area or one state, if we have several states in our region. We definitely view local National Weather Service offices as the operational arm during drought for local areas. However, NIDIS would like to do what we can to support your offices during drought. So that's something we hope to talk about today, is how we could improve this flow of information, during, before, after drought, and what your offices might need and what NIDIS could maybe help with. And really quick, before I turn it over, I just wanted to show this map, which was actually created by Ray Wolf and his office. We felt like it would be useful to have a map that showed where our DEWS regions overlap with the different local National Weather Service offices. So this map shows our DEWS regions that are in the colors, with the exception of the Missouri River Basin, which is in the blue outline, and where our offices overlap. So we felt like this would be helpful for not only us, NIDIS, to know which offices are in our regions, but also hopefully for each of you to see which DEWS region that you are a part of. And so Elizabeth, I will turn it over to you now for the Intermountain West.
Thank you, Molly. As Molly mentioned earlier in the presentation, I am currently a program coordinator with NIDIS, but I was the regional drought information coordinator for the Intermountain West and Southern Plains regions until about a year ago. And we have a new coordinator coming in next month, Joel Listenby. So I'm going to give you some examples of the work when I was the coordinator for these two regions, the work, the partnership with the National Weather Service. For the Intermountain West, there are a lot of regular state and regional drought monitoring and communication efforts. So NIDIS doesn't lead regular webinars in this region, but during the exceptional drought in 2017 and 18 and the early part of 2019 in the Intermountain West, when the drought conditions were really severe and widespread and rapidly evolving, NIDIS, together with the National Weather Service and other drought information providers, we held regular conference calls on the status of drought, and then we also jointly organized drought webinars, and the webinars provided an update on the status of the drought and the drought outlook and drought impacts in the region. And the speakers on those webinars included National Weather Service, state climatologists, and others. And then for each webinar, we jointly produced a very brief written status update that synthesized the content of the webinars. And then as the 2018 drought continued, the hydrological impacts became more apparent. So we added additional webinars that were really focused on drought impacts on water supply. And those included the National Weather Service, river forecast centers, and local National Weather Service hydrologists as speakers and as organizers of the webinars. In addition, when NIDIS led partners to develop a strategic plan for the region, the National Weather Service was part of that strategic planning committee and provided input to the strategic plan. And then finally, in most workshops that we organize, the National Weather Service is usually present and often presents. Those include organizing to support the state of Utah in their drought planning efforts and in sharing a drought amelioration tool. Next slide. So similar to the Intermountain West and the Southern Plains, there's also a very active drought monitoring and communication community. So NIDIS doesn't do regular webinars in the region, but during periods of exceptional drought, NIDIS, in partnership with the National Weather Service and others in the Southern region and local National Weather Service offices, have held drought response webinars and the written drought response updates. Similarly, when those droughts have reached the have affected water supply, we have organized additional webinars with hydrologists and the river forecast centers to present on water supply impacts from the drought. And similarly to the Intermountain West, the National Weather Service Southern Region provided input to the strategic plan, as well as updates to that plan, what was accomplished during that plan time period. And also similarly to the Intermountain West, the National Weather Service has been key at many of the drought workshops, including a recent workshop on forecast-informed reservoir operations. I'll also just say that I think a key part of the work that we do in partnership with the National Weather Service is much more informal. It's the regular conversations and updates and talking with each other about what's happening with drought, what do we need to do together, who should reach out to whom. So these slides, I think, just show the very concrete actions on things we worked on together, but I think there's an informal component that's absolutely critical for addressing drought needs in our regions. And then with that, I'm going to turn over to Britt Parker.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I would definitely agree with everything that you just said about the informal partnerships and communication and how helpful those are. So as Molly mentioned, I am the Drought Information Coordinator for the Missouri River Basin and the Pacific Northwest, and I'll just highlight a few activities that we've been involved together with the Weather Service in these two regions, starting with the Missouri River Basin. And I realize I say Upper Missouri River here simply because I started with a big flash drought impact assessment we completed for the 2017 Northern Plains drought, which a number of the Weather Service WFOs in the region were key contributors to that document, and trying to better understand what happened through that drought, communication pathways, actions to reduce impact, and how we might learn from the 2017 drought and droughts that have come before to improve our work together in the future. And we're also working on a manuscript for BAMs out of that report, so that should be coming hopefully sometime mid-year. We work closely with the Western region and the WFOs who attend many of our annual meetings in the regions and workshops in the regions, as others have mentioned. In both the Missouri River Basin and the Pacific Northwest DEWS, we are going through a strategic planning exercise right now, and we've had some great input from the Weather Service, and I'll be asking both regional offices as well as RFCs and some of the WFOs to comment on the draft plans as they come out, especially around kind of operational communication about drought, and then also around activities to try to help improve predictions and forecasting around drought. In this region, the Missouri Basin RFC provides presentation and updates on the Missouri River during many meetings and webinars, especially during pertinent drought and flood events, which is awesome. And we've worked with Ray Wolf, as Molly has said, in the central region to try to better coordinate with the WFOs during drought, especially on communication products. Next slide. Engagement in the Pacific Northwest, we hold annual water recap and outlook meetings every roughly October, November of each year at kind of the transition of the water year, both in Idaho and then for Oregon, Washington. And we have great participation and presentations in those meetings, and those meetings are always well attended by stakeholders in the region. Working with Andrea Baer and in addition now Catherine Roden in the Western region, they're key partners. Andrea has been great in our bi-monthly webinar series in the Pacific Northwest, to presenting herself as well as helping to identify Weather Service or Climate Prediction Center presenters for the seasonal conditions and climate outlook portion of that webinar. So with our NOAA, RISA, and our Climate Hub, USDA Climate Hub in the region, the Weather Service is a key partner in pulling off those bi-monthly webinars. Again, we have participation from the Weather Service in our annual meetings, which has helped to inform our upcoming strategic plan. And as I said, I will be kind of tapping some of our key Weather Service partners to help me finalize those plans and some of the activities that are related to some of what the Weather Service does in those regions, or in that region. We've also, as Molly talked about, coordinated a lot in the Pacific Northwest, much like the Midwest, on communication pieces such as drought status updates during the 2018 drought and wildfire season. And the regional office was great in helping us identify folks that we needed to engage with, to include some of our wildfire partners to make sure we were getting messages consistent and right, and then to help spread the word as we released those as drought became more intense or there started to be some relief for drought. We also launched a couple years ago now an effort, I guess this is the second full season, we've provided a snow drought page on the U.S. Drought portal, and this came from a request from the Pacific Northwest to try to better provide information on the concept of snow drought and conditions of snow drought as they change through the winter season. And so we're working with a number of partners across the region on the snow drought page on Drought.gov and updating that with current conditions, either monthly or biweekly, depending on how bad snow drought conditions are. And finally, we're doing, just small things like working with the Northwest River Forecast Center to help them promote their water supply monthly briefing. We've worked with CocoRoss points of contact in the Northwest to try to generate, volunteers for that program, and just kind of keeping in contact and working together to try to find better ways to back each other up as we try to communicate, especially during drought. And so with that, I will hand it over to Kat to talk a little bit about the new U.S. Drought portal.
Excellent. So my name is Kat Bevington. I'm the Web Content and Development Coordinator for NIDIS. So my role involves all things design and content for Drought.gov. And as you can see from this slide, we will be relaunching a fully redesigned, accessible, useful, functional website coming in spring of 2020. And what I wanted to chat with you guys about today are just a couple of the really exciting features that we have coming with this new site that might be relevant to you. So first, we have intuitive site navigation, some enhanced branding. We have a whole new section on drought by sector. We also have local pages showing individual drought indicators, brand new county level drought pages, as well as individual partner pages that will highlight your contributions to Drought.gov. So as I mentioned, we'll have this whole new section on sectors, and these are our initial 10 sectors that we'll be launching with, but these could potentially evolve and get a couple more added to as user and stakeholder needs kind of evolve with the site. But these are our initial 10 we'll be launching with. And just to highlight what will be on these new sector pages, one of the features we're really excited about are these data dashboards that I've called out here on this slide. And for these, they're meant to provide users with essentially kind of sound bites and a quick overview of what drought conditions will be like in that particular sector. So for example, this top portion is for agriculture and is US crops and livestock in drought. So here we'll have an interactive map where you can toggle between different crops, as well as look at stats related to, say, counties with crops, acres of crops, cattle experiencing drought. Below is an example of a dashboard from our recreation and tourism industry. So here we might highlight national parks in drought, snow and stream flow information, as well as ski resorts and recreational lakes. And then also on these pages, we'll have key issues, more detailed background on drought in that sector, including some economic impacts, as well as resources related to drought early warning. We're also expanding our data maps and tools pages from our current site. So one of the first things that we did with this was we added some supporting content so users have a bit of background on the particular data maps and tools topic. We've also added these data dashboards similar to the by sector section, so providing that quick glance to see what conditions are like. And then we've also improved our data and map gallery, so adding some of this metadata, so the time frame that data are available, as well as data format, so that way users can more quickly see what tools will be relevant to them. And this is an area where I know we highlight quite a few National Weather Service products, so they'll definitely be featured here, as well as potentially in these dashboards. And then last on this page, we'll be highlighting some additional resources, so highlighting specific impacts for those topics, case studies, peer-reviewed publications, and web resources. Another section of the website that we are fleshing out is our by location, so talking about drought by scale. And so this is an example of some of our pages that we currently have designed, but we'll also be adding an international page as well as watershed level data as well. So just to highlight a couple of these by location pages that we're really excited about as well, will be first our regional pages. So this is an example of the California Nevada DEWS page. And with this one, we'll have an introduction, so including our regional plans, contact information. We'll also highlight events and updates for that region, a table of regional activities, highlighting partner activities as well, resources, and the list of partners. And then our new county level pages that we're also very excited about the whole website. So for these, we will highlight stats particular for your county with references to how things might be changing, as well as current condition maps. So looking at things like temperature precip, potentially some blends, sector information, so agriculture, water supply, public health potentially for these counties, future conditions, and historical conditions. We'll also have local pages where you can get to this either through our main site navigation or through our How is Drought Affecting Your Neighborhood tool. With these, we'll allow users to actually sign up for local level, zip code level drought alerts via email. We'll have current conditions. So this on the right-hand bottom side, there's this drought indicators table. So that will provide information not only on the U.S. Drought Monitor, but a variety of indicators for your location. So things like soil moisture, stream flow, will give you a sense of kind of how drought is looking across spectrum. And then we'll also have future conditions, outlooks and forecasts for your zip code, as well as those historical conditions. And as I mentioned, we'll have partner pages highlighting partner contributions. So on all of our data and maps pages, we'll very clearly call out which partners are the ones who are actually producing specific products. As well as on our events and webinar pages, we have a whole section for space for logos, for event partners, which will then take them to, on the right-hand side, an actual partner page, which will be auto-generated and essentially highlight all the ways that you contribute to Drought.gov. So any item that is tagged with that partner will then show up on their individual partner page, which I think will be hopefully a great resource for partners to be able to show just how much they're contributing to the site and to the drought community. And last, I just wanted to highlight quickly that we are in the user testing and stakeholder feedback phase for the website, which, as I mentioned, plan to launch in spring of 2020. But we would love to get your thoughts and feedback on the site. We're doing remote moderated and unmoderated testing. It usually only takes 10 to 15 minutes just to run through a couple quick exercises and ask some questions. But if you have any interest in helping us test the new site, please send me an email and we would love your feedback. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kat. And so then for the last slide, Elizabeth, would you like to just quickly go over some of our potential discussion topics we were thinking about?
Sure, thanks, Molly. The first one, we went back to Kat's screen. There we go. The first one is that we are familiar with the National Weather Service drought assessment products. There's some really good drought information pages and drought statements, and we thought this might be an opportunity for potentially collaborating with NIDIS in terms of perhaps sharing these products more widely, making sure they're getting out in front of stakeholders in the regions and nationally. So that was one of our thoughts for discussion. We also wanted to ask you what you felt were some of the barriers or obstacles in working with NIDIS in the past. Is that something that we might want to discuss and see if we can come up with ways to overcome those obstacles? Another question is whether your office has what they need to respond to local drought requests. Is that something where we could collaborate and through our networks help share more drought information if you're getting requests that are challenging to handle in terms of the number of requests or where they're coming from? And then the final one is how can NIDIS best keep up with who is the drought focal point in each of the WFOs? So those were our thoughts on what we might like, we would propose for discussion, but we're open to any other topics that you are interested in discussing in terms of potential for collaboration. I don't know on this format, the webinar format, how we can open it up to a discussion, but hopefully, Fiona, perhaps you know how we can open it? Or do people put it in the question box?
Yeah, actually this is Jenna. I'm helping Maggie out with the webinar. Yeah, people can either type their questions in the questions box or the chat box. I think it's the questions. Or they can raise their hand and we can try to quickly unmute them and they can ask their question directly.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, do the panelists, I'll just ask, do the panelists have the questions pane? Do you guys see the questions?
I don't see any questions. I can see the pane. Yeah.
You can see the pane, okay.
Okay, well, I don't see any questions so far. This is Maggie again. I think I'll start with one for you, the regional coordinators. Could you, several of you talked about the importance of the relationships between you and the regional and local weather service offices so that you can have informal conversations about drought conditions and what's going on. Do you have any tips for building those relationships?
This is Molly. I can try to tackle that one. You know, I think a lot of my interactions with National Weather Service happen, you know, at various meetings, workshops that are happening across the region. So that's always a good opportunity. But I think also something that I've been trying to do recently is reach out one by one by email to the offices. I kind of just started this, and I guess I would say the same thing for, you know, the local offices that don't feel, you know, hesitant to email us. You know I would love to hear from you if, you know, you have a question or just want to touch base and establish that connection. That would be, you know, I would love that, and I'm going to kind of continue to reach out to those offices in my region. I don't know if any other coordinators have any other comments on that.
I guess this is Britt. I would just echo that meeting representatives, whether from the regional office or from the WFOs at meetings and workshops, has been a great way to start to build relationships. Face-to-face is always really nice in the beginning. But yeah, so I would just echo that's I think where a lot of the relationships have started to be built. And then, you know, outreach on specific issues or issues in specific locations have helped. I have not done what Molly's starting to do with just some general outreach, but I think that's a great idea too.
And this is Elizabeth Wade. I agree with everything you've said, although it's interesting with the southern region, I've never met Victor Murphy in person, but he and I have collaborated quite a lot over the last few years. And I really rely on him to, you know, bring things to my attention. If he says, okay, this is, the conditions are worsening here, let's talk about how we might organize the various information providers and how we might spin up a webinar or what's needed. I rely a lot on Victor to kind of alert me to what needs to be done given the conditions that he's seeing in the region. So while I agree with that face-to-face is wonderful, unfortunately I haven't had that opportunity with Victor Murphy, but I really appreciate the collaboration with him.
Okay, thank you for that. Actually, Victor Murphy has a question and he raised his hand, so we're going to unmute you, Victor. You can talk now.
Wow, me unmute, that's scary. Yeah, thanks for the kudos, Elizabeth. Likewise to you. But I'm typing an email right now. I'm sending it to Elizabeth and Margaret and also Meredith. There is I'm going to put a link on here to all the NWS drought statements, where you can access all of them. I'm looking here at the discussion, you know, sheet that's on the webinar right now. So I think these are all the current or active, you know, drought information statements that are out there. If you could maybe just a simple link to this page, you can, you know, see what's out there, and maybe you can somehow, you know, put them on the drought portal. You know, I'm thinking about the NIDIS website. You know, y'all can link to whatever active products are out there and just somehow put them on the drought portal, maybe break them down by state or by region or by DEWS area, etc. And as far as the drought, the last bullet there, how do we know who the drought focal point is for each WFO? Every region's got, or every region has a listing of all the WFO climate service focal points, or CSFPs for short. And I can provide you, you know, list for my region, and Jenna, maybe we can make this a, and Maggie, maybe we can make this you know, sort of an action item nationally, is to provide you guys with our, you know, is to have the regions provide you guys nationally with, you know, a listing of all our current climate service focal points, so that we can share it with the, you know, the NIDIS people and the DEWS, the DEWS program managers in each region or sub-region.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. I was going to say the answer to their final question there on their slide was their best bet is to go to the regional CSPM. So you guys are the ones who have those updated lists. We don't usually keep it here at the national, but we could, on a regular basis, I guess, collate and collect it and send it out. Do you have anything else to add?
No, well, there is a question from Catherine about how the contacts would be used. Catherine, I'll unmute you as well.
Yeah, can you hear me okay, Maggie?
Yes, we can.
Okay, So for the Weather Service folks on the call, I'm the Hydro Program Manager in Western Region. Andrea is not on the call today, but I would encourage the climate folks not to forget that hydros are also part of the drought program. So in Western Region, a lot of our drought focal points would actually be hydrologists. So if we're doing a national list, just make sure you're looping in the hydro side of the house. So we could do it by region or nationally. So yeah, then the question is, we have the national drought list, and I'm just curious what this collection of focal points specifically for NIDIS might be used for. Is it just to have a contact list for different WFOs, or with the intent there'd be a new email listserv generated, or?
So this is Molly. There wouldn't be a listserv created with that. I'm thinking it's just more for having a point of contact for each office, and starting to talk with them more if they're not already familiar with NIDIS and the DEWS, and getting them more involved within our region. So no new listserv. It wouldn't be that unless someone wants to join our regional listservs.
I don't see any further questions. Remember that you can add one to the question box or raise your hand.
This is Elizabeth
Okay.
Waite. I can unmute myself, so I'm going to ask a question. I'm curious, I don't know very much about the drought information pages that National Weather Service produces. Maybe you could share with us how they're produced and how they're shared. Like, are they simply put on the National Weather Service website, or do you share it more broadly through social media, or what happens with those drought information? I don't know what you call them, status reports, or the drought information pages?
Is there, maybe I'll go back to Catherine first and to Victor to answer that one.
I will let Victor handle that one, since that's where that one came from.
Yeah, hi, Elizabeth. So, I shared with you the link, to all the drought information statements, and as per there's an NWS policy or directive on it, which recently just got updated, as a matter of fact. But basically, the way it used to be was whenever any part of a WFO county warning area, and this was WFO based. Anyway, if any part of the county warning area of a WFO was in D2 or severe drought or worse, the office was required to issue the drought information statement and to update it. I think at least monthly, although obviously some offices or most offices did it weekly or biweekly to keep it more current and fresh. Maggie, I think maybe you could chime in here, but just in the past, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 months, we changed the requirement now to be extreme drought or worse. So now basically anytime a WFO's county warning area has any amount of extreme drought, just D3 or higher in their county warning area, they're required to issue this drought information statement. And of course, they put it up on their website, social media, etc. It's used a lot by decision makers, in that area. And that's basically, I guess that's the floor, the threshold for a WFO must issue it. But obviously, if there's a lot of, let's just say, kind of warning area or a part of the state's in, prolonged severe drought or prolonged D2, something like that, there's nothing to prevent an office from going out and proactively issuing a drought information statement. But the bar or the threshold for it being a required product is D3 or greater.
Victor, this is Maggie again. Yes, that's correct. And D2 or lesser, the drought information statements are definitely encouraged. Are there any further questions?
And Elizabeth and others, I would encourage you all to maybe take a peek at that link I sent you all, which showed the current, or the active drought information statements. I saw where Peachtree City has one out in Atlanta. I'm not sure what the data is on it, quite honestly, because I know they've been out of drought for a while now, but maybe they're still keeping it current. But You can look at the products and see what they cover. I mean, we ask the offices to, provide a current synopsis, a current summary of what the drought status is in their county warning area. We have an impact section on it. In fact, I think, in the drought world, Jenna, we were impacts before the NWS even knew what impacts were. But we really emphasize impacts on agriculture, hydrology, fire, things like that. The areas, the common areas that have impacts from drought. So we mentioned that, and we do have I believe we have a short-term and a long-term forecast going forward. So those are the things that are covered in these drought impact statements. So they're pretty good products. Most of the offices are really diligent in doing them, and they cover a lot of information. And like I said, a lot of decision makers use these things for county burn bans, water management plans, drought triggers, etc.
Thanks, Victor. Yeah, I think these are great products. That's why I was wondering if we could, if NIDIS could help share these, or somehow, alert people within the drought early warning systems that these are available.
Yeah, maybe we can talk offline, Elizabeth, and brainstorm or something.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
Thank you, Victor. I don't see any further questions in the chat box. I had one for the regional coordinators, which is the system of DEWS is pretty extensive now, but there are still areas of the country that aren't officially covered by a drought early warning system. So how do you cover those areas and coordinate with the Weather Service there?
So this is Britt. I'll take that one since I'm currently working both with Alaska and Hawaii on some issues. You're right, there is a large area of the country that's still not covered by DEWS, and at this time, we don't have the capacity to further build out, what we formally call a DEWS with a coordinator and that sort of thing. But that certainly doesn't stop us from working with partners in regions, in this instance, Alaska, and Weather Service partners there. We have to, I think, be realistic about what else we can take on our plate. I already have 2 DEWS and some other responsibilities to the program, but especially in the case of Alaska right now, after struggling for the last couple of years, especially Southeast Alaska with drought conditions, we recognize that there's an interest in better understanding what drought looks like in Alaska and how to prepare for it. And so just as an example, for Alaska, what we're doing is we've said that I know there was a workshop last year that the USDA helped put on with a number of partners, including Weather Service in Southeast Alaska, that was quite successful. And so NIDIS has agreed to work with those and other partners to try to host 1 to 2 other workshops on drought in Alaska, similar. And I think they're talking about doing them at the different weather forecast office kind of regions, though I think we've been back and forth on the best way to do that. We've had a couple coordinating calls. So that's one example right now of how, even though Alaska's technically not within the line of a DEWS, we try to work through the Pacific Northwest DEWS, given that a lot of our regional partners are similar as well, and cover Alaska to try to support Alaska in, kind of moving forward with drought early warning and preparedness activities. And I think it is also a question of, the sustainability of continuing to build out early warning systems. And given that our goal is national early warning, how do we kind of take a lot of what's happening in these regional systems and perhaps, build off lessons learned and apply some of what is successful at a larger scale than some of our DEWS regions. And please, any of the other coordinators, if you want to add, I know Meredith, you kind of keep an eye on the Caribbean, given your area of the Southwest and Molly, the Great Lakes, but if any others want to chime in, but that's my experience kind of with Alaska and Hawaii and the Pacific Islands.
I don't have anything to add. I think you covered it well.
Yes, and thank you so much. And so we had one more question on what is the process to get the drought page below updated with better information of Alaskan drought impacts.
I'm sorry. Was that question for me? I'm so sorry. I got caught up in a question on GChat. I'm so sorry. Pertaining to this.
I think this might be better discussed after the webinar, but it's a question about the Southeast Alaska drought page on Drought.gov and updating the impacts associated with drought.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, no, we've had that conversation. We've had that request from a couple different partners, and it's something that I do not think we will be able to update the current site just because so much effort is going into the new site. But and Kat has been out at AMS, but I was going to talk to her about whether or not we could update the impacts that go along with the drought categories to better reflect drought in Alaska. So that is something that we're working on it here.
Yes, and thanks for flagging that. I know it's come up in a couple of times, and that's one challenge with. And is this on the state page that we're talking, or a different?
Yes, if you go to, because the Drought Mitigation Center now has those more state-specific impact tables at the D0, D1, D2, but I think we still have kind of the generic descriptions, and so especially for places like Alaska, the more Alaska-specific impacts probably make a lot more sense to display. But we are talking about the state pages, and I wasn't sure if that was already in your plan.
It will be for the new website. We'll have state-specific impacts listed. For our current site, we have it just programmed to do the generic, but I can work with our web team to find out how challenging it might be to, for certain states, maybe customize those, especially for ones like Alaska where it doesn't quite fit. So thank you. Yeah, we can definitely look into that.
All right, well, thank you again. Those are all the questions I see. So I think we'll finish there. Thank you so much to our NIDIS colleagues for their presentations, and thank you all for your questions.
One more thing I wanted to add. For the NIDIS coordinators, if you aren't a part of our National Weather Service or NOAA Climate Listserv, send me an email, jenna.myers@noaa.gov, and we can get you guys joined if you'd want to join that.
Great, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jenna. And if we could get a list of on this call, that would be wonderful. This is Meredith. And also, for those, we have, NIDIS has a number of communication products. Obviously, there's stuff that happens at the regional level. There's also a national dry times that gives some really good information on what's happening around the country related to drought. If you're not subscribed to that, please feel free to do that. So anything we could do for information sharing would be great.